These were Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi's final hours, attending the inauguration of 2 dams on Sunday near the border with Azerbaijan, along with that country's president, Ilham Aliyev.
This dam can provide very safe transit for goods, for passengers and tourists. Given how seriously the work is being carried out, I think it will take less time than originally estimated, which was almost 3 years.
Then, reports began to emerge that the president's helicopter had to make what was referred to as a hard landing, that there had been an incident. Finally, it was confirmed. The aircraft had crashed in bad weather. On board, President Raisi, Foreign Minister Hussein Amir Abdullahian, a provincial governor, and their security details. The helicopter went down in a forest in a remote mountainous region near the village of Uzi in the East Azerbaijan province. A third of Iran's armed forces and more than 70 search and rescue teams sprang into action, with Turkish high-tech night vision drones providing support from the sky. But darkness, thick fog, and the rugged terrain hampered search operations. Across the country, from Tehran to the president's hometown of Mashhad, Iranians came out to pray. Nearly 20 hours after the helicopter disappeared from radar, the wreckage was discovered. State television delivered this message to the nation.
The hard-working and relentless president of the Iranian people, who did nothing but serve the people on their way towards progress, kept his promise and sacrificed his life for the nation.
There's been no official word yet on the cause of the crash. One aviation analyst says changing weather conditions can pose challenges, even for experienced pilots.
You know, the issue is when you're taking off and the weather is clear, and then you're in mountainous, rugged, forest-like terrain, there could be fog developing in areas that you don't expect fog to develop.
But the age of the helicopter may also have played a role. The US-manufactured Bell helicopter had been in service since 1971. Western sanctions have made it difficult for Iran to obtain spare parts or new aircraft. The Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, has declared 5 days of mourning. According to Iran's constitution, a council comprised of the Speaker of Parliament, Chief Justice, and First Vice President have 50 days to call elections for the next president. Michael Appel, Al Jazeera.
Well, let's bring in Hamidreza Azizi. He's a non-resident fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. He joins us now from Berlin. Hamidreza, let me start by asking you to reflect perhaps on Raisi's legacy and particularly how Iran's foreign influence has evolved during his time in office.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, according to the Constitution, the president is not the highest-ranking official in the country. So he's actually the second figure in the power hierarchy, second to the supreme leader. And that means that when it comes to strategic directions of the country, be it in foreign policy or domestic politics, the cabinet in general and president in particular, they have more of a kind of executive role, and basically in the sense that they have been implementing the directions of the supreme leader. When it comes to the person of Raisi, I mean, he used to be known as basically the weakest president in the history of the Islamic Republic, because he was basically a loyalist to the system, of course, but when it comes to a clear vision for foreign policy, there was no such thing. So they boasted about the unity and coordination between different branches of the government, especially the Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC, and the administration. And also, when it comes to domestic politics, he was quite in line with the ideological vision of the Supreme Leader Khamenei. For example, what we recently saw in the latest round of the crackdown for hijab. So these are basically the legacies of of President Raisi. So being a loyalist to the Supreme Leader and also supporting the work of the IRGC in the region and more broadly in the foreign policy of the country.
Well, in supporting foreign policy, in recent years it feels like Iran's had much closer relations, for instance, with Russia. I see President Putin has already been on the phone to the interim president.
Yes, that was one of the important developments of the past few years. It had to do, of course, with the conservative faction, also President Raisi being its main representative as the president, basically overtaking the whole branches of the government. So it gave some assurances to Iran's eastern partners, particularly Russia and China, that the partnership, or better to say the strategic view on the Iranian side for partnership with these countries is going to remain intact and even strengthened. So in that sense, we should interpret President Putin's word. But the absence of Raisi, I don't think is going to have any substantial impact on that direction in the parliament. The Supreme Leader himself, for example, is one of the fierce supporters of closer relationship with Russia. So as I said, the strategic directions are going to remain the same as they were under Raisi.
Hamidreza Azizi there, a non-resident fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. Thank you so much for joining us on the Al Jazeera NewsHour.
Thank you for having me.
Well, let's take a closer look at what actually happened with regards to the helicopter and the crash. We can speak to Alex Macheras. He's an independent aviation analyst and consultant. He joins us now from Doha. Alex, obviously lots of questions are still being asked, and I want to start with the helicopter itself. It's decades old. How much would sanctions have affected maintenance? I know they've taken a real toll, for instance, on commercial aviation.
Well, you're right. I mean, the helicopter involved was acquired over 40 years ago. And if we look at Iran as a whole, Iran is home to the world's oldest commercial aviation fleet. It is a similar scenario to those aircraft that are owned privately. And given that they are so old, they are deteriorating. The stats speak for themselves. Around 2,000 Iranians have died in aircraft crashes since 1979. This is a country that, because of these sanctions, has struggled to obtain spare parts. And in aviation, spare parts are fundamental in order to provide adequate maintenance, not least to young jets, but especially to the older jets that need that extra care. And so we know that when aircraft are not receiving the maintenance that is required, you end up into a territory that puts ultimately the lives of those on board these older aircraft at risk. So it's likely that it could have played a role.
If there is such an awareness of the poor maintenance of the aircraft fleet in Iran, if the weather was as bad as it was, why did the helicopter take off at all? And given that there were two others in the convoy that made it, why not this one?
Well, this is, of course, the question that I think we'll leave to the investigators that will try to determine the exact cause. But what I will say is that, as is often the case in aircraft accidents, it is a variety of different contributors that come together ultimately to form that final outcome, rather than just one single thing. So it is likely that when you combine something like the deteriorating older aircraft in need of maintenance with something like poor weather, which can, of course, complicate even the most ordinary of flight, never mind that in a region that is mountainous, for example, then you quickly begin to see how, again, that risk level is increasing.
Alex, when we heard the initial reports of the incident, the presidency was talking about a hard landing. Now, when you look at images of the crash site, the disintegration of pretty much the whole aircraft except for the tail, what does that tell you, and what implications does that have for the investigation?
Well, something fundamental has obviously occurred, something drastic. It doesn't appear to be so consistent with that initial report. I will note that later they were referring to it as a crash rather than just what they referred to it in those early hours as the, quote, hard landing. And, you know, helicopter and travel by helicopter is generally less safe than traveling on a fixed wing commercial aircraft or a private aircraft. So already you've got a slightly increased risk there. And as I say, with the backdrop of having the oldest fleet of aircraft under those US sanctions, they only were able to import new aircraft into Iran during that brief period in the Obama administration where the Iran nuclear deal was active. Airbus managed to get some new jets in and some other stakeholders. And then, of course, Donald Trump, the president at the time, pulled the plug, and Iran's aircraft fleet, it continues to deteriorate now. So, as I say, it's likely to be a contributor of all of these things, and that's what the investigation will probably focus on.
And we'll be following that very closely indeed. Alex Macheras, then, independent aviation analyst and consultant. Always great to get your insights. Thanks for joining us again on Al Jazeera, Alex.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.